There is a kind of tiredness that sleep cannot fix. You know this tiredness. It settles deep inside you, not in the body, but in the soul. It comes from pushing, forcing, trying to make life behave the way you think it should. It comes from replaying conversations in your mind, resisting what already happened, worrying about what might happen next. And the truth is, you're not exhausted because life is asking too much of you. You're exhausted because you've been arguing with life instead of listening to it. From the moment you wake up, many of us go into battle mode. We brace ourselves against the day. We try to control outcomes, manage people's reactions, predict problems before they arrive. We tell ourselves that if we just think harder, plan better, worry more, we can finally feel safe. But all that effort creates tension, not peace. Life begins to feel heavy, not because it is heavy, but because we are carrying it with clenched fists instead of open hands. Resistance often disguises itself as responsibility. It sounds like, I have to figure this out, or I can't let this go, or if I don't control this, everything will fall apart. Yet beneath those thoughts is fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of uncertainty. Fear that life might not support you if you stop pushing. This is where the struggle begins. Not in circumstances, but in the belief that you must fight reality in order to survive it. At some point, something inside you grows tired of the struggle. Not weak tired, tired of swimming against the current, tired of forcing answers that don't come, tired of carrying the weight of how it should be. This tiredness is not failure. It is wisdom beginning to wake up. It is the part of you that knows there must be another way to live, a way that doesn't require constant resistance. Life was never meant to be conquered. It was meant to be cooperated with. When you resist what is happening right now, you cut yourself off from the intelligence that brought you here in the first place. There is an order moving through everything, through your breath, your heartbeat, the changing of seasons, the unfolding of events. That same intelligence is moving through your life, even when you don't understand it, even when it looks chaotic from the outside. Many spiritual teachers, including Wayne Dyer, spoke about this simple but profound truth. When you stop resisting life, life begins to support you. Not because life suddenly changes, but because you are no longer blocking its natural flow. The moment you stop saying this shouldn't be happening, something inside you relaxes, and in that relaxation, clarity begins to appear. You don't need to force your way forward. You don't need to solve everything today. You don't need to carry the future on your shoulders. The exhaustion you feel is not a sign that you're failing, it's a sign that you're ready to stop fighting. And that readiness is where real change begins. There is an important distinction that changes everything once you see it clearly. Pain is part of life, but suffering is not. Pain arrives naturally. Loss, disappointment, uncertainty, and physical discomfort are woven into the human experience. Suffering, however, is what happens when the mind refuses to accept what the moment is offering. It is not the event itself that creates suffering, but the story we tell about it. The moment you say, this shouldn't be happening, you step out of peace and into resistance. Most people spend their lives trying to eliminate pain, believing that if they can just arrange life correctly, they will finally be free. But life does not work that way. Pain visits everyone. What differs is how long it stays and how deeply it cuts. When pain is met with acceptance, it passes through like a wave. When it is met with resistance, it lingers, hardens, and becomes suffering. The mind replays it, analyzes it, argues with it, and keeps it alive long after the moment has passed. Suffering thrives on comparison. We compare what is happening to what we think should be happening. We compare our lives to others. We compare this moment to a past that felt easier or a future we believe will be better. In doing so, we leave the only place where peace exists, the present moment. Resistance pulls you out of now and traps you in an imagined reality that cannot support you. This resistance often feels justified. The mind says, if I don't resist, I'm approving of what's wrong, or if I accept this, I'll never change it. But acceptance is not agreement. Acceptance is simply recognizing reality as it is, without adding a layer of mental struggle. From that place, true change becomes possible. Fighting reality drains your energy. Accepting reality freeze it. Many spiritual traditions point to the same insight. As Wayne Dyer often reminded his audiences, when you argue with reality, you lose every single time. Not because reality is cruel, but because it is unmovable in the present moment. What has already happened cannot be undone by resistance. The only thing resistance accomplishes is pain multiplied by time. Notice how suffering shows up in the body. Tight shoulders, shallow breathing, a clenched jaw. These are signs of inner opposition. The body reflects the mind's refusal to allow life to move. When you soften mentally, the body follows. When you stop insisting that things be different, something inside you relaxes. This relaxation does not mean the situation disappears. It means you are no longer adding suffering to it. Freedom begins the moment you see that suffering is optional. Pain may knock on your door, but suffering only enters when you invite it with resistance. You don't need to fix life before you find peace. You only need to stop fighting what is already here. In that stopping, clarity emerges. And clarity is far more powerful than struggle. The word surrender often makes people uncomfortable. It sounds like defeat, like weakness, like giving up control and letting life walk all over you. But surrender, in its truest sense, is not about giving up your power. It is about releasing the illusion that you ever had control in the first place. Surrender is not collapse. It is alignment. It is the moment you stop pushing against life and allow yourself to move with it. Most resistance comes from the ego's need to manage everything. The ego believes it must control outcomes to feel safe. It wants guarantees, timelines, and certainty. When life refuses to provide those things, the ego tightens its grip. This tightening feels like effort, anxiety, and pressure. Surrender is the willingness to loosen that grip, not because you are giving up, but because you are finally trusting something greater than your limited perspective. Surrender does not mean you stop taking action. It means you stop forcing action. There is a difference between inspired movement and frantic effort. Inspired action feels calm, clear, and timely. Forced action feels heavy, rushed, and driven by fear. When you surrender, you allow the right action to arise naturally. Instead of demanding that something happen right now, you act, but without desperation. You move, but without resistance. Many people fear that if they surrender, nothing will happen. But the opposite is true. When you surrender, you create space for life to respond. As Wayne Dyer often taught, when you stop trying to be in charge of everything, you allow a higher intelligence to work through you. This intelligence has been guiding your breath, your heartbeat, and your growth since the moment you were born. It does not suddenly disappear when challenges arise. Surrender begins internally. It is the silent decision to stop arguing with the present moment. It is saying yes to what is, even if you do not like it, even if you do not understand it yet. This yes is not approval. It is acceptance, and acceptance brings peace because it removes inner conflict. When the inner conflict ends, clarity appears. You see more clearly what needs to be done, or sometimes that nothing needs to be done at all. True surrender also includes surrendering the need to know how everything will work out. The mind wants answers before it feels safe. Life often works the other way around. Safety comes after trust, not before it. When you surrender, you allow yourself to rest in uncertainty. Without fear, you trust that the next step will reveal itself when it is time. This is where freedom lives. Not in controlling life, but in cooperating with it. When you surrender, you do not lose direction, you gain guidance. You do not lose strength, you gain support. You do not disappear, you align with something larger than yourself. And from that place, life begins to move in ways you could never have forced on your own. Something subtle but powerful happens the moment you stop resisting. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or dramatic signs. It begins quietly, almost unnoticed, a softening, a loosening inside. The constant inner pressure eases, and for the first time in a long while, you feel a little more space within yourself. This space is important because life can only move through you when you are no longer blocking it. When you let go, you stop sending the message that you are at war with reality, and life, which has always been responding to your inner state, begins to respond differently. You may notice that problems don't feel as overwhelming. Situations that once triggered anxiety no longer pull you in as deeply. You start seeing options where before you only saw walls. This is not because circumstances have magically changed, but because you have changed how you relate to them. Letting go does not mean everything suddenly becomes perfect. Challenges still arise. Decisions still need to be made. But the quality of your experience shifts. You are no longer reacting from fear. You are responding from clarity. Instead of forcing solutions, you begin to notice them. Instead of chasing answers, you allow them to arrive. Life feels less like a struggle and more like a conversation. Very often, when resistance drops, synchronicities increase. The right words come at the right time. The right person appears unexpectedly. Opportunities show up without being hunted down. These moments are not accidents. They are signs that you are back in alignment with the flow of life. As Wayne Dyer often emphasized, when you are in harmony with the universe has a way of meeting you halfway. Letting go also brings relief from the burden of constant self-judgment. You stop blaming yourself for not being further ahead. You stop criticizing yourself for not having it all figured out. You begin to trust that your life is unfolding at the pace it needs to. This trust restores energy that was once wasted on worry. And with that energy, new possibilities emerge. There is a natural intelligence guiding life. It knows when to open doors and when to close them. It knows when something needs time and when it needs movement. When you let go, you stop interfering with this intelligence. You stop trying to force fruit to grow before it is ready. You allow timing to work in your favor instead of seeing it as an enemy. This is why things begin to work when you stop resisting, not because life suddenly obeys your demands, but because you are no longer standing in the way. Flow replaces force. Trust replaces tension. And even when outcomes are uncertain, you feel supported rather than alone. You begin to sense that life is not happening to you, but moving with you. Letting go is not the end of effort. It is the end of unnecessary effort. And in that ending, life finally has room to show you what it has been trying to offer all along. Letting go is not something you do once and never return to. It is a moment-by-moment practice lived quietly in the ordinary spaces of your day. It shows up in how you respond when plans change, when people disappoint you, when life refuses to follow your expectations. Non-resistance is not a grand spiritual achievement. It is a gentle willingness to meet each moment as it is, without immediately trying to reshape it. In everyday life, resistance often appears in small ways. It sounds like impatience when things move too slowly. It feels like irritation when people don't behave the way you want them to. It shows up as inner commentary that judges, complains, or argues with reality. These reactions are so habitual that most people don't even notice them. But the moment you become aware of resistance, you create the possibility of choosing differently. Living without resistance does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means responding rather than reacting. When something triggers you, pause. Notice what is happening inside before acting on it. Often, what you discover is not the situation itself, but a demand the mind is making. A demand that life be different. When you see that demand clearly, it begins to lose its grip. One of the simplest ways to practice non-resistance is through acceptance of the present moment. This does not mean you approve of everything or stop working toward change. It means you stop fighting what already exists. You acknowledge, this is what's happening right now, and you allow yourself to be here with it. From that grounded place, your actions become clearer and more effective. As Wayne Dyer often taught, peace is not found by rearranging the outer world, but by releasing inner opposition. When you stop insisting that life conform to your preferences, you free yourself from constant tension. You begin to act from wisdom instead of urgency. You say less, but what you say carries more weight. You do less, but what you do is aligned. Non-resistance also transforms your relationships. You stop trying to control how others think or feel. You listen more deeply. You respond with curiosity instead of defense. This does not make you weak. It makes you present. And presence has a quiet power of its own. People feel it, situations soften in its presence. Even your inner world begins to change. Thoughts still arise, but you no longer believe every one of them. You notice them without being pulled into their stories. Emotions still move through you, but they are allowed to come and go. Nothing is suppressed. Nothing is clung to. This is emotional freedom. Living without resistance does not remove challenges from your life. What it removes is unnecessary suffering. You stop adding mental weight to situations that are already difficult enough. You stop exhausting yourself with inner battles that cannot be won. And in that simplicity, life becomes lighter. Non-resistance is not about perfection. You will forget, you will resist again, and that is okay. Each moment is another invitation to soften, to allow, to trust. And each time you choose acceptance over struggle, you move closer to the peace that has always been available to you. At some point, the deepest peace comes from realizing that life does not need to be managed as much as it needs to be trusted. Beneath all the movement, the uncertainty, and the changing forms of your experience, there is an intelligence quietly at work. It has been guiding you long before you were aware of it. It guided you to breathe your first breath. It keeps your heart beating without asking for your permission. And it is guiding the unfolding of your life with the same precision. When you stop resisting, you begin to sense this intelligence again. You feel less alone, less burdened, less responsible for holding the world together. You realize that you were never meant to carry everything by yourself. The need to control begins to soften, and in its place comes a quiet trust. Not blind faith, but a deep inner knowing that whatever is happening is part of a larger movement you do not have to fully understand to participate in. Trust does not mean that everything will always go the way you prefer. It means that even when things don't, you are supported. It means you stop interpreting every challenge as a sign that something is wrong. You begin to see difficulties as redirections rather than punishments. Life is not testing you, it is shaping you, refining you, preparing you for what comes next. This trust allows you to rest inside uncertainty without fear. You stop demanding answers before you take the next step. You stop insisting on clarity before movement. Instead, you move with what you know now, trusting that what you need later will appear later. This is how life has always worked. As Wayne Dyer often reminded people, when you align with the flow of life, life has a way of carrying you exactly where you need to be. When trust replaces resistance, gratitude naturally follows. You begin to appreciate moments that once went unnoticed. Simple things feel meaningful again. You recognize how much is already being given to you. And gratitude deepens trust, creating a cycle that supports you instead of draining you. You also stop rushing yourself. You stop believing you are late or behind. You understand that growth cannot be hurried without being distorted. Everything unfolds in its own timing. When you honor that timing, you stop comparing your journey to anyone else's. You walk your path with patience and respect. Trusting life does not remove effort from your experience. It removes struggle from effort. You still act, choose, and create, but your actions come from alignment rather than anxiety. You stop pushing against the current and allow yourself to be carried when carrying is no longer necessary. And slowly, almost without noticing, life begins to feel like it is working with you rather than against you. You feel supported instead of tested, guided instead of lost, at ease instead of tense. This is not because life has changed, but because you have remembered something essential. You were never meant to fight life. You were meant to live it, and the moment you stop resisting, you return to the quiet truth that life knows exactly what it's doing.